Welcome to Season 2 of the Be Free Show. This is my good friend Anise. I'm Ali, and we're so happy to be back with you all discussing our 6 main topics: relationships, health, education, activism, race, and faith. We're expanding and adding new topics in Season 2.
Yeah.
Season 1 was really about, if we had to tell you in 5 minutes what we thought about each of these domains, here's 5 minutes of what we believe about relationships or health, etc. This season is really about us taking a step back and having more of an organic conversation, inviting some guests onto the show, and introducing new topics, like I said. And so today's new topic is on self-love. We're really excited to talk about this. It's an ongoing journey for not only you and I, but everybody out there. And we have 3 key points that we want to kick off to you, per usual, and we're partnering it with some key questions that we ask ourselves and we're posing to you. Get us started, Anise.
So the first one is learning myself. How well do I know my background and my personality? And then we're going to go out and talk about loving self. What does it mean to actually love me for who I am? And the third thing we're going to talk about is called tending to myself. So now that I love myself, I've understood my background, the third thing we're going to focus on is this idea of how do I make a plan so I tend to myself and I'm consistent to taking care of me.
Yeah, really asking ourselves, what do I need? And now what's my plan to actually get to this place? So when we're talking about this first one, learning ourselves, how well do I know my background and personality? You know, we're asking questions like, what makes me happy? What makes me sad? What are some of the past scars that I'm dealing with? What is the generational trauma in my family? What are some of the positive habits or values that have been passed down from generations or from my mother or father or guardian? These are all critical things that too often we don't ask ourselves. They operate in our subconscious and they impact our daily lives. And it would really benefit us to take stock of these things.
Yeah, so one of the things we want to talk about is you hear people say you get triggered, right? Or sometimes you have an emotional response to something. And you take a step back and you say, why did I respond in that way? Like, why did the way Ali said hello to me send me from 0 to 360? And I think that's a great time for you to pause and say, what's in my background? What's in my history that caused me to have this emotional response? So if I can be specific, you know, we've all heard people say, she got daddy issues, he got mama issues, right? And we laugh and joke, but there's actual truth to that. Like oftentimes when someone has a mama issue or a daddy issue, it's oftentimes tied to some emotional hurt or pain from that particular parent that often then will resurface in a relationship with the man or a relationship with the woman that will cause us to have this triggering event. And for me, I had to realize, you know, some of my challenges in male relationships had to do with some unresolved issues that I needed to process and deal with from my own father.
Yeah, and when we've had this conversation before, one of the things that I thought was really important to highlight was this idea that everybody has some version of a mommy or daddy issue. And what I mean by that is when we think about mommy or daddy issue, our mind likes to jump, at least oftentimes, to, situations where there was an absent father or an absent mother or an abusive father, an abusive mother, whether it was physical or emotional. But the reality is we all have very complicated relationships with our parents. You know, they're often people we look up to, we seek validation from in some form or the other. And like you said, these things continue to manifest themselves either in relationships with like same gender people, so daddy issue manifests a relationship with a male, or it just re-manifests itself in the relationship with your actual father.
Oh my goodness, that's very, very true. Yeah, I think that's a really good point because you find yourself getting frustrated. You're like, why am I frustrated with this person when they know that when you know that they're doing their best and they're giving you their best. I'll just share a really quick funny story. So my dad and I are planning to go to Ghana. I hope he's okay with me sharing this story on camera. And we needed to. You have to take a couple of shots to go to Ghana, and he told me literally like a week and a half before it's time for me to go, and my schedule's really tight and pressed, and I found myself getting frustrated. I'm like, why are you telling me this now? One shot is I'm only able to get it at one of 3 clinics in the entire Los Angeles area. But then when I took a step back and I realized, I was like, he actually was doing what he wanted to find out what the needs were from his own doctor and then to tell me what those needs are. So it was really an act of generosity. He didn't want me to have to figure out what shots I needed to take. He wanted to go and take care of that business part first and then to say, hey, Anise, these are the things that you need to take care of. Yeah. And because I paused and processed that, like why I was triggered, why I was upset, it really helped me to see that like had nothing to do with him. He was actually doing what he wanted to do, which was to be a caring parent and try to lessen the stress on me.
Yeah, powerful example. And really just talking about parents, mommy, daddy issues is one example of many when we're talking about starting to learn ourselves and our patterns. We think that's the prerequisite. We think that's the homework you have to do first before you start to think about what does it actually mean to love myself? You know, what grade would you give yourself on a scale from 1 through 10 or something in terms of the way you love yourself? And when I think about that, it's how often do I forgive myself? How compassionate am I with myself? Do I encourage myself, or is it always this critical self-talk? Is it always this self-doubt? Is it always, you know, beating myself up in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point is how do we practice that self-compassion? And I want to just quickly pull up this book. So this book by Marianne Williamson called A Return to Love was a key turning point in my life. Actually, a friend recommended me to read this book. And when I read it the first time, you know, I don't think I really got the depths of it. And I ended up reading it again this past year. And one of the things that she does in the book is to help us understand the importance of returning to love as a basis in all of our relationships. And in particular, love as a basis in who you are as a person. And your ability to practice love and kindness with yourself will then help you be able to have that same level of empathy and show that love and kindness with someone else. And she says, you know, when you have a conflict with someone or you have an interaction with someone that's not pleasant, it's often because that person has entered the interaction from a place of fear. And so one of the things she says is that if someone is entering into an interaction from a place of fear, the other person has to enter from a place of love so that that love can overtake that fear and sort of bring love back to the forefront. So in essence, it's a quick way to say, rather than engage in two egos, right, having two egos come from one another, lower your ego and come to a place of love, return to love, which will then invite that soul, that spirit of that other person to return to love.
I love it. So powerful. I didn't think I was going to go here in this episode. This is kind of related to activism and other things.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You really just made me think about the power, the overtaking power of love in any circumstance, right? So you're talking about love conquering fear, but love also conquering evil, right? As it manifests itself in society in various shapes and forms and sizes. Love is the only galvanizing force. We often talk in society about good versus evil. But the reality is, you know, good sometimes isn't good enough, right? It takes that love to take that extra step, to be selfless, to organize, to be an activist. And that's the only time you're really able to overtake systems that are, you know, bringing bad into the world, bringing evil into the world.
Yeah, no, and I'm actually glad you said that, because that's why we talk about free self to free society as a key part of the Be Free movement and the Be Free show, because I have to free myself. I have to have healthy relationships with myself and other people, a strong faith foundation, you know, in order to be able to free society, right? And that's, to me, was the epitome of what you just said, as love being the foundation to doing social justice work. But I'm going to pull us back into the loving myself piece. And I would say, you know, there's other ways that we love ourselves, like going to the spa. I particularly love going to the spa, getting massages, you know, taking some alone time. I know that I think you're quite the connoisseur of how to maximize solo time. And I've learned a lot from you about solo time and quiet time as a way to love me. Do you want to talk about that a bit and how you do that self-love?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, for me, I would say a lot of it I just have to credit to the nature of my personality. I'm naturally more of an introvert. That surprises people sometimes because I love people and I enjoy being in social settings. But as many of you know, if you're taking a test like the Myers-Briggs or kind of a personality assessment, it's about where you get your energy from. And while I love being around people, the way I energize, the way I re-energize is to really spend that time alone in solitude. I'm also a creative, and as a creative who's constantly wanting to make things, it requires me to be alone to really get into that mind space and to dig deep into myself. And then from a spiritual standpoint, we're both this way, where we just believe in nurturing that vertical relationship with God.
I agree.
And that takes, you know, time alone with God.
Yeah, and I think that key point of being in quiet and being in silence is so important, you know, turning off your, whatever you're listening to on your iPod, turning off the TV or turn off your laptop, or even turning off your music, to just be in silence so you can be one with yourself and be able to listen to your body. Your body will tell you, where you are. And I think a key part of loving self is to make sure that we have those moments where we can care and tend to ourselves, go to the spa or, go for a hike, any of those things. But we really encourage you to ask yourself the question, what does it mean to love myself? And how do I really know that I'm actually loving myself?
So 2 quick things. You highlighted such an important distinction, which is that me time can't be a multitasking thing.
Yeah.
We're really talking about that meditative piece. And it doesn't have to look like, you sitting cross-legged and, doing the traditional, what it looks like mainstream to meditate. But really taking time to commune, with God, or to turn inward silently. The second thing is, you talk about this, it's debunking the myth that self-love, self-care is just going to the spa or getting your nails done or, having a hair day or whatever it is, right? It's a lot more than that. It's really doing the internal work.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that distinction there, because it's both, again, this idea of inside
and out.
And out. So we're going to get to our third point, which is tending to myself. This idea of what do I need to do, and then how do I make a plan for that, right?
Yeah.
So, sometimes we have the intention to make time for ourselves or to show ourselves love and care, but something will come up, someone will call us and we pick up the phone, or someone will ask us to go do something, and we may abandon this time that we wanted to put towards nurturing ourselves. So do you want to talk more about how you tend to yourself?
Well, you just made me think of our third key point from season 1 when we talked about physical health, and we're going to talk about it again in season 2.
Right.
But the third key point was that regardless of willpower, we all need goals and a regimen. And you're bringing up for me that regardless of our willpower, we need to make the time and space, a plan, an actual plan.
I agree.
And stick to it. And so one of the ways I do it, to answer your question more directly, is I actually put it on my schedule. Right? This is the hour in my morning where I'm going to read my Quran, where I'm going to pray, where I'm going to write some songs, whatever it may be. Right? And I take that time and I protect that time. I take it very seriously.
Yeah, and I would say I do the same thing in the morning. I have an hour where I get up and I have to do my meditation, I have to pray, do my devotional, and answer a few questions that help me orient and situate my day. And I realize when I don't do those things, I have a shorter fuse, or I feel like I'm off center.
Yeah.
And so this idea of putting it on my calendar and having my alarm go off has really helped train me to tend to myself and to make sure I set that time aside before I begin the workday. Because the moment I step out of my cozy bedroom, I know there's going to be so many things coming at me, and if I don't prepare myself for that, who knows what could happen.
Yes.
I think for some other ways, people may tend to themselves through therapy or through going to church or going to the mosque or synagogue or whatever sort of grounds you. And therapy for me has been a key part of tending to myself because it has allowed me to pull back so many layers that came from the how well do I know myself? How well do I love myself? And through this 3-year relationship that I've had with my therapist, I've just grown tremendously. And I just want to put a plug out there for therapy because, number one, it's an objective third party to give you the space to be fully free, to be fully who you are without an objective. Right. Some people say, I can talk to my mom or my dad, but, sometimes when you're talking to your friends or your parents, they could have a filtered lens, right? They may have their own perspective on this is how it worked in their life, and that's not the same as your situation. Yeah. So I still seek all those sources, but I know with my therapist, they don't have a dog in the fight, essentially. They're just trying to help me make sense of what's going on.
Yeah, it's so true. And my therapist has truly transformed my life. And the way he has done that is he's skilled in asking those questions and listening deeply and helping me discover more about myself. That's ultimately what a therapist is doing. You're so right about it being an objective third party. We're not saying that you can't talk to friends or parents and that they may not help you along on that journey. You help me a lot on that journey. My mom helps me on that journey. My sister helps me on that journey. But a therapist is the person who's skilled and trained in helping you dig deeper and in leading you, on that path. So I also have a 3-year relationship, and it's just worked wonders with me. You're giving yourself an hour a week or whatever it is to dig deep. And I just, if you're in college and you have free access to this through the insurance that's provided to you, please take advantage of it. And if not, if you have health insurance or if there are other ways you can look into affording it, a lot of therapists offer a sliding fee, sliding scale. Please look into that, because I can't recommend it enough. When we're talking about tending ourselves in these, so much of it is this inside-out journey and mind, body, and spirit alignment. Can you talk about that alignment?
Yeah, so I actually want to hold up a book that I think has been near and dear to the both of us on our journey to tending to self. So it's Wholeness, Winning in Life from the Inside Out. We both attend One Church LA here in Los Angeles, and we've been deeply inspired by the teachings of Touré Roberts and our First Lady Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. Yes. And that book, I think, is a great way of describing this idea of like mind, body, and spirit, and this tending to yourself. And it really looks at how do you become the best version of yourself, but how do you pull back these different layers? So, for example, I talked about having a trigger. So when you have a triggering moment, don't just dismiss it. Ask yourself, what happened during that moment? How has that impacted your perception? And then how do you begin to start to reset your behaviors? Yeah. And in particular, the mindset pieces, our mindset controls how we view the world, right? And so if I have what they call a cracked mirror, or if I have a distorted view or perception, then that's going to impact my spirit, how I feel about a person, how I feel about a thing. Yeah. And then it can also impact my body, what I eat. Am I exercising? Am I taking care of myself? How am I managing and handling my stress? But I don't want to keep talking about the book because I know you have your thoughts, but I'm going to toss it over to you. How do you sort of practice that mind, body, spirit connection?
Well, I want to say one quick thing about this book. What I love about this book is it takes the notion of self-help to a new level, because it actually gives you the practical tools, the frameworks, the skills. What questions should I ask myself as I'm trying to do the work of getting underneath my patterns, how I think, and what to actually do about it. A lot of books are written with beautiful intent, and they're well written, but they kind of leave you like, all right, what's my first step? What do I do now? Exactly. This book really lays those steps out for you. For me, Anise, I think it goes back to identifying what needs to be a priority in my life, and again, protecting that time. So, we talked about therapy. We talked about the time we take in the morning to do spiritual work. For me, it's also like physical fitness, right? I struggle with back issues. I prioritize yoga. I prioritize being in the gym. I practice self-compassion. I meet myself where I'm at. I'm not totally sure I'm at a place right now, for example, where had I not had a personal fitness coach, I would keep myself on the strict weightlifting regimen that I need to be on to sustain myself or to be the best version of myself. And so I rearrange things from a financial perspective to make that a priority. Right. And maybe the day will come where I won't need that, or maybe I'll always want that, even when I don't need it, right? But just protecting, being compassionate and protecting the time to do self-love.
Yeah, I think that's a great example for how do you tend to yourself, how do you make a plan, how do you make those different decisions, and not allow what would be a mind barrier of money or I don't have enough time in the day to do that. You're able to rearrange, and that's a key point of tending to yourself. Yes. And we hope during this episode you took some time to really ask yourself, what do I know about my background, and how is it showing up with how I interact with other people? What do I really know about what it means to love myself? Do I have practices for the ways I should love myself? And the third thing, really thinking about how do I tend to myself, and what is the plan to get there?
So you can find us anywhere online at Be Free Show. We really in this season want to continue the conversation. Please comment, not because we're looking for numbers, but because we're looking for your engagement, and we really care deeply about you. That's why we're doing this. Exactly. And we want to be in dialogue. So until next episode, we love you and be free.